Hello gamers. Today I want to teach you guys how to sync songs using Reaper for In the Groove or Stepmania just in general. Mostly just for ITG though. So let's get started. First things first is we're going to want to download Reaper, and you can get it for Windows, Mac, and even Linux. I have a link for it in the description of the video where you can grab it, and then after you download it, you're going to want to install it. So once you have everything installed and ready to go, you're going to want to change some options right off the bat so you can get things working the way that you want them to. I think when you first run Reaper for the first time, it's going to have this preferences thing come up anyway. So on the audio settings for device, you want to change the audio system to something that's going to actually play audio. Generally, if you're using like Windows, it's going to be wave out. Almost always going to be wave out. Sometimes it'll be direct sound, but it just depends. And also, if you have like a special sound device like drivers, then it's going to be that instead. But almost always it's going to be wave out. And then so once you pick that, you can hit apply and then OK. And then next you want to go into your project settings, and this is important. So for the time base, for items, envelopes, and markers, you want this to be time, always. And then time base for tempo, time signatures, you want that to be beats. Don't ask me why now, it'll make sense later. So then you want to save that as your default project settings, and then press OK. Some additional project settings you might want to be aware of are how audio files are treated when they are added into the project, or if anything has changed about them. So for this one, you want to uncheck these two because they create fade in and fade outs on new objects. Or if, like, for example, you split, like you cut a song, it's going to add a fade in and fade out on it, and you probably don't want that because then it's going to sound weird every time you cut a song, and you're going to be like, why does it sound weird? And that's why. So if you disable that, then it won't do that anymore. And another thing is you want to have the snap enabled over here, which is this grid, so that way when you cut and move a song, it's going to be on this grid and everything will line up nice and neat. And another thing is having the grid lines enabled in the first place, which you can also further customize. So like right now it's only on quarter notes. You can change that to be like eighths, 12ths, 16ths, 24ths, 32nds, etc., all the way up to 1/28ths, which shouldn't be necessary, but it's there if you need it. So let's say you finally found a song that you want to step, and you are ready to start syncing it and getting ready for stepping. The first thing you're going to want to do is figure out what the approximate BPM is, not the exact BPM. So first, there's two options that you can do. One being the Mixmeister BPM analyzer, which is really simple. You literally just drag the song into the program and it will calculate the BPM as close as possible. It's not usually super accurate, but it can give you a rough idea. So like this one, it says 9401, and we can take a listen to it really quick. And it doesn't really sound like 94, so it's probably double that. So another thing we can do is the All 8 BPM Tapper tool, which gives us probably a more accurate idea of what the song's tempo is. So we can tap it out here. So we have an idea. It's like somewhere between 188 and 189. We're not entirely sure, but given that this is 94, if you double that, it's going to be 188. So let's just, we can try 188 to start. So we can close this, open up Reaper, throw in our song, and we thought it might be 188, so we can input BPM to 188 here, down at the bottom, and now the grid is going to shift and be at 188 BPM for every line for every beat. And the reason we did that earlier with the project settings to set the time envelopes to time is because by default, if it's set to beat and you change the BPM, it's going to change the tempo of any song file in the project, and we do not want that to happen. So now we can change the BPM freely and not affect the song at all, and only affect the spacing. So next, we're going to want to try to figure out how this lines up on the grid, because obviously it's not lining up at all. And the best thing to do is to find a really well-defined hit, I guess you could say. Good things to look for are bass hits or like drums, snares, anything like that, because they have a very well-defined hit to them. So like, for example, this note here we could use to line up, and it clearly starts back here where it starts to peak. So we're going to drag our cursor to there and zoom in real big, and we're going to start it right here. So once we figure out where the start of this beat is, you're going to split it with the S key, and now it's split into two different parts, and we can delete this first part for now. So now when we move this, it's snapped to the grid, and it lines up with the grid very nicely, actually. So you can see, if we go further into the song, it's lining up pretty well with everything. It's a little bit off, maybe. We can keep looking at the waveform in different spots to make sure that it is 188. And it's looking like it is. Everything is lining up pretty nicely. Can't really read that one. But yeah, this is the general idea. So now we have confirmation that it is 188 BPM. We can probably fine-tune this a little bit more. Drag it back just a tiny bit more. Delete this beginning bit, and now we can drag this all the way back to the beginning. And now even the beginning bit is going to be on sync with the grid. So yeah, now it's cut to a 0 offset. So that way it starts immediately. So now that we have the song cut to a 0 offset, we have a couple of options. We can either export the audio as is currently, or we can cut the song to fit our specific needs for whatever we're stepping. So let's say we did want to cut this song, maybe like cut out a chorus or a verse or something, make it shorter. You could do that extremely easily. So let's try to find a chorus. It starts right here, so all you have to do is, just go to the grid. It's clearly on the same, starting at this measure, and so you press S to split. And now we can go ahead, try to find the next chorus. And you can cut it. You see it starts right here on this measure. So you can cut it there, and then just delete this whole middle part, and then just drag this back to where we started our first cut, and it should just seamlessly just go through. Yep. Can you even tell I cut it? I just did. So yeah, that makes cutting songs super, super easy. No math involved at all. You just cut and move. You can even rearrange this whole song if you wanted to. It's so easy just to do anything really, and it's super nice. You can loop sections, like if you wanted this to loop, I don't know, each of those is 2 measures, 2, 4, 6, 8. You could loop an 8 measure section, just copy this and paste it over and over. I don't know if that actually loops, but no, it doesn't. But let's say it did. That's all you would have to do, and it's super easy. And then, okay, so now that we have it cut, we can export it and get it all ready. Oh, we could also trim this off because like we don't need this extra time here. Could just trim it down, fade it out, and then okay, so we're ready to export. So we're gonna go File, Render, and it's gonna bring up this menu page right here. Export, I usually just do it to desktop because that's easy for me, but you don't have to. I think by default it goes into like my documents folder, so you can like set that up here in the directory, which is easy. One thing you want to do is turn this tail off. It adds a whole second of silence to the end of your song, which is pointless in my opinion. So you can disable that, and then you want to do output to OGG Vorbis, which is what like everyone who plays ITG uses, because 3.95 is bad and only can use OGG. So that's what we do to help. So you want to export as an OGG Vorbis. You can change the quality here, 1 being the highest. Generally, you want anywhere between 6 and 8. Any more and it's just overkill, because like, let's be real, ITG speakers aren't amazing, so like you're not gonna hear the difference between 8 and 1. And it's also gonna take up way more space on the hard drive than if you did like 6 or 7. So generally anywhere between 6 and 8 it's going to be fine for quality, and then you can just hit render, and then it busts out your song file for you nice and fresh. So now that we have our file exported and we have this nice little OGG here, you know, nicely cut to a 0 offset, perfectly ready to be stepped, the first thing you want to do obviously is throw it into a folder, usually with the same title as the song. So we're going to do that. And then for the SM file, usually what I do, or most people do really, is they just copy an SM file from another song that already exists. So we're going to do that. We're going to use WASM-up just because, hey man, rename it, open it up in Notepad. Same thing again. Gonna rename everything to match our song and chart. You know, remove all these credit fields, the background and banner. I mean, you can fill those in later. We're just strictly talking about stepping here. And now for the offset. So since we cut it to a 0 offset, you would assume that our offset would be 0, right? Wrong! So our offset's not going to be 0 because of stock ITG has a global offset of negative 0.012, and we have to accommodate for that, and also on top of that accommodate for the speed of sound from the speakers to your ears and all that fun stuff. So Mute came up with this a while ago, and we've come to the conclusion that 009, positive 009, is what you want to make it as on sync as possible. And then next, we're going to do BPMs. We don't need a display BPM. We just need the base BPM here, which is 188. And then you save it. Oh, I guess you could change the step artist field too if you wanted. So for me, that's what I do. Label it a 1, and then save it, and then throw it in Stepmania, and you're ready to step, and that's it. So when it comes to syncing, not everything is perfect. Here is an example of a song that does not have a whole BPM value, and how to figure it out and deal with it. So first things first is we're going to do the BPM tapper again while we listen to the song. Okay, so we have a pretty good idea that it's roughly 130. So we can throw 130 into here, find a beat that we can line up the song with. We'll start with the second beat here. Cut it right at the start, just right here. Bring it back to the beginning. You can see that it's if you're zoomed out, you might think, oh, that's fine, and then you zoom in and you find out that it is in fact not fine, and it's actually pretty off sync. The notes coming way early before the beats on the grid do. So clearly it's not exactly 130. And there's a pretty easy way to figure out the BPM for this. So we can find another distinct beat further into the song, because we can tell that it clearly needs to be a faster BPM. So we can insert BPM changes. So we're going to do exactly that. So let's pick this beat here. And you can see it starts way back here. So we're going to press Shift and C, and that will insert a new tempo change. And we'll just press OK. And now this neat feature is, so you hold Control and drag the BPM change to the beginning of this beat. You can zoom in a little bit to get a more accurate, and then zoom back out. And then you can just go back to the beginning, and you can see it's 130.041. You can check beats between everything between there and the beat that we just figured out. You can see that it lines up a lot better now. It's not exactly perfect, but it's definitely in the right direction. Actually, I think my first cut was bad, so we're going to fix that here. Yeah, things are lining up much better now. And then we can just delete this. Now it's 130.041. We can check some more beats at the end and see that they do in fact line up pretty well. And then we can go back to the beginning, drag this forward a measure, and go back to the beginning of the song. There you go, it's on sync. It's not too bad. It's not too often that you'll find electronic music with weird decimal BPMs, but in the case of this, it's from an N64 game, so it's definitely expected. You just always have to be on the lookout. You can't just always assume that it's going to be an entire whole BPM. For this next bit, we're going to talk about how to sync existing charts that just have, a wrong offset or wrong BPM. Our first example is going to be Superluminal Tachyon Explosion from Tachyon Beta. So we're going to drag this in. We already know the BPM. We know that it's 160. So we're going to put in 160 to our grid. And we're going to take a look at this. And it looks like for the most part it's pretty close to a 0 offset as far as the cut of this or the waveform goes. Yeah, I'd say that's 0 offset. Song has kind of weird attacks, so it sometimes can be hard to tell. So let's assume that it has a 0 offset. Let's take a look back at this SM file. So if it has a 0 offset, we know for a fact that this offset here is already completely wrong for a multitude of reasons. One being that it's not 0, which would be closer than this, and this is going in the negative direction, which is wrong. Positive 0.5 would have been closer, but the offset should just clearly just be 0.09. Whoops. And that's it, really. And we can just assume that those BPM changes at the end are correct, because, I mean, Box did make the song, so I assume he knows what the BPMs of the song are. And I have one more example of syncing a normal song. This time we're going to use Wasm Up from Tachyon Beta as well. This one is 230 BPM. It's already known. So we're going to scoot further into the song. We can see that it's clearly not lining up the way that's supposed to, and it's pretty even across all the notes. There's just the same amount of spacing, so we know the offset is not 0. It's going to be different. So first thing we need to do is calculate what this difference is. So thankfully there's time markers for each piece on the grid, so we can just use that to our advantage. We can move our cursor to the beginning of this beat here and see that it's 37.568, and we could subtract that difference from the grid marker. So we can pull up our handy dandy calculator, just do some simple subtraction. You see that's a 0.003 difference. It's not much. And so now how do we apply that to the SM file itself? So an easy way to remember what to do with this difference and offset is if you would need to move the song file to the left, then it's a negative amount. And if it needs to move to the right, then it's a positive amount. And again, that's the song file itself, not the grid. So if the song file is, in this case, is moving to the left to match with this, it's going to be a negative amount. So then our offset's going to be something closer to negative 0.003. But that's still not correct because of ITG's global offset difference. So we still have to add a positive 0.009 amount, which then turns this from negative 0.003 into positive 0.006, and now it is the correct offset. And that's how you would sync a song that already exists without having to recut and re-export the song at a 0 offset. I hope that this was helpful for anyone. Just be aware that I will be making a sequel to this to help deal with songs that have drift and how to deal with that, as well as even normalizing a song with BPM changes to be one constant BPM. So be on the lookout for that video in the near future, hopefully. And until then, I'll see you later.